It is Wednesday, April the 23rd, 2025. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte. That's Frank Strait in Columbia, South Carolina, with Dan Whitaker in Greensboro, and Scotty Powell's coming from Myrtle Beach in just a moment. We're talking hail in the Carolinas on this week's edition of the Carolina Weather. Roll that open. We are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. Join the conversation, and hello to everyone who's listening on our audio podcast. It is great to have you along too. We have been tracking hail across the Carolinas, in North Carolina and South Carolina yesterday and today. We will take you out right now to radar and show you what's happening in this 9 o'clock hour on this Wednesday night. And you can see we do have a severe thunderstorm warning, a teeny tiny one just north of Columbia there, along with a special weather statement. And you can see those storms here in motion, moving very slowly because, Frank, as I understand it, we're in a bit of a stationary setup here.
That's right. A little stationary front has moved into the Carolinas and is, it's stationary. So not moving very much. And there's not much flow aloft either to move storms along. So where storms form, they don't sit completely still, but they only drift a little bit. So you can even get a prolonged downpour from these tiny little storms, which is a good thing because we're really dry here in South Carolina. I think that's the case for a lot of North Carolina too. But you get these severe thunderstorms and they can kind of hang around for a minute or two. But because they're not moving very much, the National Weather Service can draw those warning polygons quite small. And so that's what we've seen over the last couple of hours just northwest of Columbia. Those of you traveling along I-26 can encounter these storms and expect some downpours to reduce visibility, make the roads wet, and even you may hear some hail dinging off your car.
You certainly might. We can see right now that this single severe thunderstorm warning polygon has a forward storm motion of only 10 miles an hour. But these aren't the only storms that we've encountered over the last 24 to 48 hours. Let's show you the map from yesterday. These are all the local storm reports that the National Weather Service offices across the Carolinas have verified. You can see all the yellow polygons on your screen there for each of the storms that received a severe thunderstorm warning. And a couple of these did verify. We can actually show you some photos that were taken from Lancaster County, South Carolina, where they did have storm damage. Some small hail fell, along with trees that fell down. Unfortunately, did damage some structures. We know it did cause some power outages. These are some photos. Look at the size of this tree, guys. That is a monster tree that fell there in Lancaster County, South Carolina. Photos from the Emergency Management Agency. They did share these, but I think the headline from Tuesday, not only this damaged airplane hangar in Lancaster County, but let's roll Dan's hail video over in that North Carolina area. Dan, walk us through this. What did you encounter yesterday?
So, kind of a lone supercell. It had been traveling for a while, and on the west side of it, kind of just some stratiform rain. So it was out there by itself, clear skies around it, and I decided that things that I could try and miss with this storm.
Dan, if you can hear us, I think we've lost you. I will talk here for a moment. We're looking at a video that Dan shot in Staley.
Yeah, in Staley. So I positioned myself in front of the storm and kind of just let it come over me. I had to move a couple of different times to try and get in some of the bigger hail, but the goal is to measure it, and a lot happens when the hail's falling like that. So, I measured it as best as I could. I definitely got a number of pieces that were 1.5 inches across.
1.5 inches. We saw it on the screen there in size, in the comparison size of the quarter coin. And we know you relayed that to the National Weather Service and it became a local storm report. We also saw your car. How's your car doing after 1.5 inch hail?
Just some more dings on it, it seems. I already had a bunch, so.
Dan,
that's a badge of honor for a storm chaser.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Frank. I know when Dan was with us for the 500th episode of the Carolina Weather Group at IBHS, you were proudly showing off those hail dings, and you had some helpers with you on Tuesday's chase too, didn't you, Dan?
That's right. So for this chase, I was able to have the kids out of school in time. So My son, who's Ellis, who's 7, and my daughter Eva, who's 4, got to put on helmets and hop in the car. And I said, let's go witness some hail. They've done this before, and particularly my 7-year-old. So he was out there with me looking for hailstones and getting bonked in the helmet with large hail. So he was a trooper. I was really glad to see him helping me do these official reports. We reported through Spotter Network as well as to the National Weather Service, and we included pictures of the measured hail. So ultimately was trying to get a really good time and location sample of where this hail fell.
We can see Stormy the Weather Cat with Frank making an appearance tonight. Hi, Stormy.
Yes, Stormy the Weather Cat approves. She says it's one hail of a video, Dan.
Well, the hail we got this week, you guys, comes a year after that storm in Rock Hill, South Carolina last year. I think caught many of us off guard. Our friends at IBHS, the Insurance Institute for Business, Home, and Safety in Chester County, South Carolina, has a new report out. QR code is on the screen right now because they were right there. They went from Chester to York County last year to go see that storm in Rock Hill. They shared some photos with us. Again, you can find their full report right now by scanning the QR code on your screen. But I also had a chance to catch up with Jake Sorber. You may remember him from our 500th episode of the Carolina Weather Group. He is a researcher there at IBHS. We went to his hail lab. We shot the hail out of the cannon. Dan's shaking his head yes because I think he's itching to go on back.
Right. That was a great time.
It was a wonderful time. But Jake was telling me a little bit of what their science has uncovered a year after that overperforming storm in Rock Hill, South Carolina. So let's take a listen to my conversation. And this week does mark 1 year since what I'm referring to as the freak storm that hit Rock Hill on April 20th, 2024. Jake, that may not be a meteorological accurate term, the freak storm, but I know you went just one county over and saw that storm.
You're absolutely correct. It was a freak storm, right? And SPC issued a marginal outlook on that day of the event. And when we see the Storm Prediction Center issue a marginal outlook, we're not saying, oh, there's going to be a ton of severe weather today, right? That's basically them saying this might happen. But normally we call those events mesoscale accidents, right? Because they weren't really forecasted.
They're overachievers.
They're overachievers, right? It was a mesoscale accident. After the storm passed Rock Hill, I was on scene right after the storm passed. And I found a high concentration of significant hail. So hail that's above 2 inches in maximum dimension, right? Severe damage to the siding of homes, the roofs of homes, the 80 to 90 mile an hour gusts from the rear flank downdraft of the storm blew over trees, right? So it was chaos in Rock Hill, especially in the southern part of Rock Hill. They got hit the hardest.
That day reminded me a bit of what you guys uncover when you take your expeditions to go hail chasing out into the Midwest or the plains or someplace where storms like this are a fair bit more common. What was it like to see it in our own backyard?
This event would be a severe hail event even by Midwest standards. So that's saying a lot because in South Carolina, we see hail events like this maybe once every decade. You have about a 5 to 10% chance each year of seeing a significant hail event like the one we saw in Rock Hill last year.
Marginal SPC day, tier 1 out of 5. So we always say the chances of stuff happening is never zero, but I mean, it was low. I don't think anyone had this on their bingo card for that day. As a homeowner, I don't know that I would have been anticipating this type of event to come rolling on through. But if this is what can happen when a storm overachieves on a marginal day, we get slight and enhanced, even high risk days here in the Carolinas. So if somebody's considering, Jake, protecting their home against the next time a freak storm like this happens, what have you guys found at IBHS that homeowners might be able to act upon?
Yeah, so here at IBHS, a lot of the research we do in the Hail Lab looks at the performance of roofing materials, mostly asphalt shingles, but we've also looked at metal, tile, so on and so forth. We've also looked at siding, and we found that there's 2 main classes of shingles. There's conventional asphalt shingles, and then there's asphalt shingles that are designed to withstand impacts from 2-inch hail. The asphalt shingles that are designed to withstand impacts from 2-inch hail perform better, but those are mostly only available in the Midwest where these kind of events happen all the time. And so what we saw in Rock Hill was just a lot of these regular asphalt shingles, these conventional asphalt shingles being exposed to this 2-inch hail, it was basically, these roofs were basically being damaged regardless of their age in the most severe hail. Now, when you get to the fringes of the hail swath, so the hail swath is where that storm is dropping the hail spatially, right? You have that smaller hail. And if you have a new roof, your chances of that roof surviving that smaller hail is pretty high. But as you go to older roofs, so maybe you had a 10, maybe a 15-year-old roof, you had a much higher chance of experiencing damage. But in that 2-inch hail, in the core of that hail, right, we saw, regardless of what the age of your roof was, it was being damaged. Okay. And so that's something that might be unique to these conventional asphalt shingles. We don't know because we haven't studied an event where we have a mass of impact rated asphalt shingles that are designed to withstand these 2-inch hail stones, right?
That is the image, I think, of a perfect world, right? Where everyone's got the most protection on their home as possible. There's certainly a cost factor associated with that. So as a homeowner, I guess I'm constantly weighing the risk versus reward of what materials I'm using.
There absolutely is a cost factor. We would love it if every home in the United States had a good or excellent performing impact rated asphalt shingle. And I say good or excellent performing because that's how we rate them here, because not all impact rated asphalt shingles are created equally, right? But I will go on to say, since these products aren't readily available in South Carolina or on the East Coast in general, homeowners would have a hard time finding a way to source those shingles, right? And so there are things that homeowners can do beyond just the roof cover to protect their home. They can protect themselves against damage amplifiers, is what we here at IBHS would call them. And one of those damage amplifiers is water intrusion into the home due to roof damage. We saw this in Roddy Park in Rock Hill. We have a picture of a water intrusion specialist truck parked outside of a house, right? And whether that water was getting into the home because wind tore that asphalt shingle off the roof, or the hail was so severe that it punched holes through that asphalt shingle, it was probably both. But in general, homeowners can do what we would call a sealed roof deck. It's part of the Fortified program. So they can tape the seams of the sheeting on the roof. So the plywood has seams in it. They can tape those so that if the roof cover does fail, or as we like to say, when the roof cover fails, that water won't enter into your attic, it won't enter into your home and cause further damage.
I remember on this show, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich from WCNC had an accidental testimonial for some of these impact standards, because to your point about availability of some of these things, or even kind of the workmanship of some of these things in the Carolinas, they're not usually needed, but may be needed. He redid his roof. He worked with his vendor to fortify it, even though the vendor hadn't previously done that type of work before. And lo and behold, his house took a hit from a tornado, and he saw some of the benefits of that. And that's what I was thinking about when you were talking about, the availability of these things, or maybe having to work with your contractor to really execute that. You guys have a report out about what you guys saw last April in Rock Hill. There's an interesting nuance in it that I hadn't considered before about solar panels, as people maybe are considering getting solar panels. Do they act as like a shield against the hail, or does it just increase my damage now if I have broken solar panels too?
Yeah, so they do in a sense act as a shield, but only at low severities. And only slightly. So at low hail severity, say your hailstones are only 1 inch, right? So they're just barely marginally severe is what we would say. Those solar panels won't be damaged by hail that size, right? So solar panels are one of the few materials that actually perform well to what they're designed to. So it takes about a 2 to 2¼ inch stone to crack a solar panel. So as you go from smaller hail to larger hail, you go from you're less likely to have a claim, and then all of a sudden, boom, your solar panels are getting damaged because you have 2-inch hail, and now you're more likely to have a claim than if you didn't have solar panels.
And the real world science that you guys do, right? You're not going to knock on somebody's door and say, hey, do you mind if I fire 2.5-inch hail at your home and see what happens? But then these storms come about from Mother Nature, and in a way they give us scientific data out of maybe someone's unfortunate interaction with Mother Nature. The fact that this happened in our backyard a year later, Jake, I'm still like shaken and surprised by it. Let me ask you this last question as we wrap up. You've seen a lot of this hail damage, what you do in the lab, what you do out on your expeditions when you go storm chasing. What was your lasting personal or professional memories from going to Rock Hill a year ago and seeing the siding damage, the roofing damage,
I actually put this in the report. So obviously the roof damage was severe, but it's not the most visible. At least it wasn't the most visible for those on the ground. The siding damage was striking. The amount of shredded vinyl siding on homes, especially homes that were open to just the onslaught of hail, right? There were no trees. And so that siding really got destroyed. Siding is a vulnerability in these events, right? And they account for a large part of the loss. And I touched on it briefly, and I just want to say this region, or in the regions of a hail swath where the hail is large, 2 inches and above, right? The likelihood that your roof is going to get damaged is high. The potential for mitigation and reducing the burden on homeowners and insurers comes when we increase the baseline performance of these building products, especially asphalt shingles. We can actually shrink the path of damage from that hail. So the hail that's on the fringes of that storm, smaller, right? And so if we increase that baseline performance, that smaller hail isn't going to damage the asphalt shingles. Right? And so that's kind of the crux.
It's really cool here in the Carolinas to have Jake Sorber and all his colleagues at IBHS right there in Chester County, South Carolina, centrally located. If you missed our 500th episode and want to watch some of the amazing science that they do, there's a link on the screen right now to check out what they do. Scotty Powell in Myrtle Beach, good to have you back on the live show, Scotty. You guys had some hail in Myrtle Beach today, I think, right?
We did, and typically you don't see a lot of hailstones around the coastal areas, but we had that stationary front move through, and a quarter to ping pong size ball hail was reported in Horry County, even into Georgetown County. So we saw, especially in the Socastee down towards Surfside into Garden City area, that saw some hail today. Much needed rainfall down here, not enough to get us out of any drought or anything, but we'll take anything we can get at this point. But honestly, also saw a boat that was struck by lightning in Georgetown County as well.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so it was a pretty active afternoon and early evening here across the Grand Strand. So all the storm activity has come to an end. But yeah, we even got in on the hail talk. I was looking at Dan's pictures from yesterday, and we were talking about those in the Weather Center today, just how rare it is to see that large of hail in North Carolina and the Carolinas in general. We normally don't see that here. So yeah, we got in a little bit on the hail action as well today.
Dan, what were your impressions when you were chasing that hailstorm again yesterday in Staley, North Carolina?
So yeah, that's great. Y'all got to look at those pictures and everything, Scotty. I was impressed by for a couple of reasons. One, this storm was severe warned, and it was pretty large, and it had a pretty large core to it. So I actually timed it out from the first larger hailstone I saw to the last one. It was actually 8 minutes long, which is a long time to kind of be stuck in the middle of a hail barrage. Most of the stones were probably around an inch or below an inch, but we did see a lot of them that were 1.5 inches. I think if I had been able to get my caliper working correctly, because it wasn't soaked and it's digital, right off the bat, I would have measured one that was 1.75. I have it in a picture in comparison to a quarter, but yeah, basically some big stones out here. And what was noticeable was when I went to the gas station, there was a lot of people there looking at their cars. There was a lady beside me, and I told her that I reported it, which was good for, I think, them to know, because now with an official report of large hailstones with a measurement, insurance claims and stuff like that can begin to go through. So she's looking at her car, she's finding dings on it. So just right there in the community I was in Staley, North Carolina, which is outside of Greensboro, kind of near Asheboro, that area, is going to have hail damage. And I believe that a lot of those storms that produced that day did have hail cores. So we're going to be seeing this isolated hail damage just randomly as these isolated hailstorms hit.
We know your video also ran on WFMY, so it helped broadcast media tell people downstream what was coming. I saw a comment on our social media that said, oh, this must be why I saw a local storm report from the National Weather Service, because you guys sent it in. And then, that final trickle down the insurance part of it, as Jake and IBHS well know too. All of those things play a factor in real-time storm warning, storytelling, and insurance claims if the damage so calls for it. So, we've got that stationary front here across the Carolinas for the next few days. I'll put Frank straight on the spot and say, Frank, what are our chances of seeing more afternoon showers and thunderstorms the next few days? Oh, Frank has pulled a Scotty.
Oh.
Which is Carolina weather lingo for forgot to unmute himself.
There, finally. We have a cold front that's, a stationary front, I should say, that's just sitting over us and is going to continue to sit over us for the next couple of days. Looks as though it's going to lift northward on a little bit tomorrow into Saturday. The shower and thunderstorm activity becomes more focused on upstate South Carolina and North Carolina. And then on Saturday, we finally get another push of cooler air coming south out of Canada and pushing into the Carolinas. That could trigger another shower or thunderstorm, but perhaps not as widespread as what we see on Friday. And then looks like we get a cooler and less humid day across the Carolinas on Sunday.
Yeah, the return of humidity. Spring is here. The flowers are blooming. The pollen is amongst us. So I don't know about you guys, but mowing the lawns and getting the sprinklers out again seems to be where we're at. But some of this rain could be helpful for the drought, Frank, right?
That's right. We are still in drought. There's South Carolina's drought conditions here. Now there's a small part, little sliver right along I-85, I guess, in upstate South Carolina that's technically not in a drought, and a little sliver down to just north of Savannah, this very southern tip of South Carolina. But everybody else is either abnormally dry or in a drought, and it is quite dry still in Scotty Powell territory there in parts of Horry County into Georgetown and Upper Charleston County, where they're in the D2 area. As for North Carolina, well, that's how it looks, and there's a band of solid drought conditions basically across your DMA there, James, the Charlotte DMA that goes up into the northwestern North Carolina mountains, and another band of fairly significant drought conditions, even some D2 area there along North Carolina's coastal plain there, and they're in. What are those counties there for the Wilmington area, Scotty?
You have you have New Hanover, Brunswick, Columbus.
That's what I get for putting you on the spot. I didn't think that was Pender. I thought it was a different one.
Pender, you have Pender County down that way, Onslow.
Yep, there we go. Let's just look it up there. Hey, that's Pender and Onslow counties. That's right.
Yes.
Come on, guys. Fifth graders can fill in all the counties on the map. I think we should be able to do it too.
A fifth grader in North Carolina might be able to.
I'm not commenting on that, Frank.
That's right.
Well, we know that there are also some lasting impacts of drought, and that has been burning wildfires. This is something we have seen in western North Carolina, really big over the last couple of weeks. In upstate South Carolina, really big over the last few weeks. Those two particular areas amplified by Hurricane Helene damage, which is laying on the ground. We are happy to report that the B-Rock fire in McDowell County nearly fully contained tonight, and all the evacuations for that one have been canceled. But Scotty, Myrtle Beach kind of kicked off this fire season real early with that real big fire you guys had down there in Carolina Forest, if my memory serves me correct. Yep. And I think I saw it's still flaring up all of these months later.
It is still flaring up. In fact, today's Wednesday. I think it was Monday. My days run together sometimes, but Monday it flared up so much that there was extra firefighter officials that were moving into the Walker Roads community because new patches of area that had not been burned yet outside of the containment line was burning. And so a whole new rush of fire trucks trying to get that put out. So the Covington Drive fire is at 90% containment right now, just under 2,100 acres, but we're still seeing flare-ups every day. Now, we did get some rainfall today, some nice rainfall, so we'll kind of see how that goes in the next few days. But once we dry back out and we see lower humidities and gustier winds, what happens with this fire in particular, and Frank can talk to this because he's a South Carolina native, is here in the Grand Strand, the low country, you have this peat soil. And so it's kind of a it's in an old bay. The Carolina Bays is what they're called, and so this fire is actually underground, a couple of feet. South Carolina Forestry Service has done an amazing job documenting this fire and kind of showing how deep this fire is actually smoldering. And so some of these spots are 2 feet deep. So until those bays fill up, and honestly, the only way they're going to fill up is if we get some kind of heavy rain system or a tropical system. These fires will continue to kind of just smolder there. And then on those bad weather fire days where it's really dry, sunny, gusty breezes, you'll see these smoke columns just pop up. In fact, a couple of times this week, you could see back over Carolina Forest, you'd see these big columns. It's not as intense as what you're seeing in this video, but you would still see smoke columns like what you're seeing right there on air pop up in the air. And so just kind of a reminder that the fire is still there. And like I said, it's going to take a while for this fire to completely go out just because of the peat soil. And you're going to have to really just get a really intense rainfall to kind of just make it all the way that deep into the soil to put the fire out. So we've had a couple other fires in the area, so it's still dry down here, as Frank was showing you. A lot portions of Horry County still in that D2 drought level, and until we get really I hate to say this, but the only way to get out of a drought is normally a tropical system in these cases. Until we get that really heavy rain for a couple of days that kind of just soaks into the ground, we could see this fire smolder for the Forest Commission said for weeks. So, that's kind of what they're dealing with. And there's still a crew here from the Forestry Service monitoring it. If you go through the Walker Woods community, like where this video is being shot at right here, there's still, a fire truck here or there that's kind of just roaming the neighborhood to make sure the fire is staying within its containment lines. And, it's just going to be an ongoing process until it's all out. And I think we're on day 65.
It was March 1st that it started.
Yeah.
This video was shot a few days after that. So this video is from early March.
Day
March,
55?
April. Yeah, something like that.
55? Yeah. So it has been around for a long time, and these folks here in this community, we WBTW, we've talked to them numerous times, and they're just ready for it to go away. And especially in the morning times, it's really smoky in that area when you kind of get that inversion and that smoke really is trapped to the ground and the wind isn't really there to kind of stir up the air. It just kind of sits there overnight and then early in the morning. So the effects are still lingering around the Carolina Forest area. And that backs up with the anniversary of the 2008 fire. Is that correct, Frank? 2008, 2009? I can't remember which year it was.
I can't remember which year it was either, but you're right.
I think it was 2000. Yeah, it was 2008, I believe. And this was the Highway 31 fire that consumed over 20,000 acres and 76 homes destroyed, evacuations. And it just kind of, the footprint of the Highway 31 fire is kind of in the same footprint that this fire is right now. So it's a very prone area. There's some video. Was that or some pictures of that back in 13 years ago. So it just, this area is very prone to seeing forest fires. And when you build, something that, James, you guys talked about, I'm sure at the IBHS, is when you have that urban interface backed up against the wildlife interface, you got homes that are backed up to forest. Unfortunately, things like this happen. And it's Horry County is no stranger to big fire events, and this from back 13 years ago shows you how intense it was.
Yeah, so this was one of the largest fires there in South Carolina history near Myrtle Beach. Like you were talking about, 19,000 acres burned, 76 homes were destroyed, with another 97 damaged. 4,000 residents were evacuated at the peak of this. And so you can see here in some of these anniversary photos that were shared, this is actually going to be almost 15, 16 years ago now, because this is actually an old post that you're looking at here.
I'll add something to this too, because we had a story about it yesterday. I just couldn't remember the year, but we had a piece. At this time, the area was not under any drought at all.
Wow.
There was no drought or anything. This was just it was dry conditions, but it wasn't severe enough to have a drought in store, and it still happened. So it kind of just shows you.
April of 2009.
Yeah, to 2009. Yeah.
Wow, crazy stuff. Yeah, so keep that in mind. We don't have any burn bans right now that I'm aware of, but
we do
continue. Oh, do we?
Yeah, Horry County, unincorporated Horry County. So if you don't live in the
Okay.
city of Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle Beach, or Conway, there is a burn ban up for Horry County. So unincorporated areas. So
all right, we don't have any statewide burn bans.
No.
We have had some already this season. We could end up with more, but I was just going to say whether they're there or not, be smart. If you're going to have a backyard fire, keep it small, keep a water extinguisher source nearby, and watch for overgrown brush. I know I have not yet had a fire in my little pit in the backyard, and it's stuff all around it is all overgrown, and I got to clear that out before we do anything.
Very important to do.
Yeah. Speaking of things that are knocking on our door, well, we're going to talk about hurricane season in just a second, but actually first I want to show this video from New Jersey. Speaking of fires, take a look at big fire burning there. This is like a pine barren area in coastal New Jersey, Ocean County. It is due east of Philly. You can see some of the billowing black smoke here in this New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection video. And this is causing huge air quality problems over some of the most populated areas in the Northeast, with smoke blowing all the way into Manhattan. This is a popular area where a lot of people go on vacation. If you've ever heard of Ocean City, New Jersey, this is where this area is. And so, New Jersey is also dealing with a very, very large fire. It's been quite eye-popping to see some of these visuals. And again, this is a very thick pine barren area, not much unlike where I grew up on Long Island, where they still have some pine barrens that every few years tend to catch fire as well too. But guys, look at the smoke just billowing there with all this
pop to lick it.
Yeah, I mean, that is just like an endless supply of fuel.
I'm telling you, a lot of folks have asked me, like, what weather phenomenon scares you? And it's not tornadoes or hurricanes, it's wildfires, just because of how unpredictable they can become.
Yeah, and if this show alone has taught us anything, we've talked about hail in the Carolinas so far. We've talked about fire in the Carolinas so far. Mention of Helene, of course, is a major flooding disaster. But let's now go to our last subject of the night. Hurricane season 2025 is knocking on our door. And we already have early predictions, early forecast outlooks from North Carolina State University and Colorado State University. We've not yet received the official National Hurricane Center forecast from NOAA. That's not unusual. Theirs tends to come third, and we'll expect it pretty soon. But the numbers are on your screen right now. But if you're listening to our audio podcast, I'll tell you first and foremost that we normally get about 14 average named storms in a season. NC State is calling for a range between 12 and 15. CSU is calling for 17 storms, so at or just above normal. We normally get 7 hurricanes on average, according to climate statistics. NC State has kind of put it in right on the number there, between 6 and 8. CSU going with 9. So again, just a tad above normal in their forecast. Major hurricanes, Cat 3 or above, we normally see 3 of those in a season in the Atlantic Basin. And North Carolina State is calling for 2 or 3, so about on par with average, while CSU is calling for 4, just above average. Frank, I know you've had a chance to look over these numbers ahead of tonight's show, and what are kind of your thoughts as you're looking at what are 2 very well-respected hurricane season outlooks?
Well, it's about what I expected we'd see. Things have changed this year compared to last year and several recent years as well. Over the last 5 years or so, we've tended to have very warm waters all across the tropical Atlantic, really all across the North Atlantic Ocean. The waters have been above normal, and last year they were way above normal, near record territory for the date. But that has changed over the last 6 months or so, and now, while we still have a good bit of the Atlantic Basin above normal, the eastern tropical Atlantic and central tropical Atlantic has cooled considerably. And if you want to show my screen share, James, I have a map showing the sea surface temperature anomaly, and that's the current view here. And you can see the Gulf of Mexico mostly warmer than average, Western Gulf of Mexico way above average, Caribbean Sea well above average, a lot of the Atlantic Ocean still above average. But Notice how the tropical Atlantic is now mostly cooler than average, or near average at least. And that is a big change from last year. Like, let's go to last year. Uh, let's see if I can find if they have it last year. There we go. This is this time last year, or April 1st of last year. The whole tropical Atlantic was way warmer than average this time last year. So this year things are different in that the waters are either cooler than average or not as warm as they were last year. Also, there's the lack of a La Nina. Let's take a look at the Pacific Basin here. Tropical East Pacific. There we go. And things have changed here as well. Last year we had a La Nina going back to 24 here. If I can get that to load up quickly, maybe not. But in that actually is 24. Let's look at 25. There we go. The La Nina that we had going on has gone away. We now have actually mostly warmer than average waters over the equatorial East Pacific. It's still cooler than average south of Hawaii. La Nina conditions, where the waters are cooler than average across the equatorial Central and East Pacific, tend to result in an enhanced Atlantic basin because you tend to have less vertical wind shear, and you also tend to have a more unstable and more humid environment over the Atlantic basin, and all that results in you having typically a better environment for tropical cyclones to develop and grow, and so you'd end up with a more active season during La Nina. And that's what we had last year. But this year, it looks like we're either in neutral conditions or maybe even going to El Nino. El Nino, the opposite's true. You tend to have more vertical wind shear because you have westerly winds aloft over the tropical Atlantic when El Nino is going on in the Pacific. And the air mass over the tropical Atlantic tends to be drier and more stable, and that tends to all limit the number of tropical cyclones you see. So those are two big differences from last year, and there are some other things as well. But last year it seemed kind of a slam dunk that we'd have an active season, and there was concern that it would be hyperactive. It turned out to not be hyperactive after all, but it was still a pretty active season. And of course, for us, it only takes one. And in the Carolinas, we had Debbie and Helene, so we had two pretty significant storms. Debbie, even though it was only a tropical storm, you don't really want to say only a tropical storm because they can still have some big impacts, and Debbie did, because Debbie caused some very severe flooding in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, and some wind damage too. Of course, Debbie was a hurricane when it made landfall in Florida, but quickly weakened to a tropical storm. And of course, we all know Helene, so we won't go over that again. But Helene, of course, was a big storm for us here in the Carolinas. So it's no surprise that they're calling for still an active season, because overall the water temperatures across the Atlantic are above normal. Overall, it looks like we'll have either kind of neutral conditions for ENSO and no La Nina or El Nino to deal with this year, probably. So that should result in an active but not hyperactive season, and it should be less active than last year was.
Well, certainly last year was a doozy, and we are hoping that is not the case again this year. Let me take a question that Jay, I think that is here in Charlotte, has put in. Does the NHC, National Hurricane Center, ever give an official estimate count of tropical cyclones? So what we can expect, Jay, from the National Hurricane Center when they come out with their outlook is the number of named tropical cyclones. So once it receives a name, once it becomes a tropical storm at 37 miles an hour, 38 miles an hour, that is when it gets a name, and that's when it'll also be accounted for in their forecast outlook. So unless, Frank, you remember some line further down and buried in their report, I don't know that we get a total number of depressions per se, but I think it's that naming threshold, I think, where they count them, right, in their outlook.
Right. I mean, they track everything. They track the
Sure.
number of depressions too, and that all goes into the official hurricane database. But what the actual seasonal outlooks and forecasts call for: the number of named storms, number of hurricanes, the number of major hurricanes, and of course this metric called accumulated cyclone energy, which just simply is a measure of the amount of energy expended by a storm during its life cycle, and you sum it up for each storm for the season, and that's what the forecast is for. And some entities also try to give an idea of what parts of the basin will be more active, like Colorado State in their forecast. They give a forecast for the amount of ACE they expect to occur west of 60 degrees longitude, which the western part of the basin is where all the people are, right, and all the land is in the Atlantic that gets hit by hurricanes. Not all of it, but almost all of it. So that's an important thing to keep track of as well. But there's not really a forecast for how many depressions, tropical depressions will occur, or how many potential tropical storms will occur, and no real forecast from most entities. I think Joe Bastardi at Weatherbell tries to give an idea of where the storms are going to make impact, where they will go. Not sure how much skill he has with that, and that's not saying he does or doesn't. I just haven't really tracked and kept track of how well he does with that. But
well, speaking of tracking things, Frank, I don't know if you even had a chance to take a look at this. This came out, I think, like after 5 o'clock today, but the National Hurricane Center did come out with their review of the 2024 hurricane season. We have tweeted this. I haven't even gone through it all yet. There are quite a number of pages, as you might imagine. But, right off the bat, we can tell you that last year, the hardworking men and women at NOAA's National Hurricane Center issued 347 official forecasts for that 2024 hurricane season. Their skills have gotten us to a point where the official track forecast errors have decreased significantly over the long term and are up to 75% smaller than they were a few decades ago. The official forecast track, they write, was very skillful and beat all of the computer models at 96 and 120 hours out. Their mean official intensity errors for the Atlantic Basin in 2024 were higher than the previous 5-year means, from 12 to 96 hours out, and lower at 120 hours out. And that is just page 1 of this document. So we'll get a chance to kind of go through this a little bit more in detail. But, I think the short version, of course, is that we know every year that forecast cone gets smaller and smaller. And when we get to hurricane season this year, we'll hopefully look for some of the best forecast cones from the National Hurricane Center we've had in years. And once again, we saw this in testing last year. We'll see it more of this year. They're going to talk more about those inland impacts of storms. We're going to, again, continue to see advisories and warnings shared on that cone graphic that show us not only what we can expect right along the strip, right along at the coast, but also further inland, which, as Dan, made a huge impact. You were in Western North Carolina for Helene, and that messaging from the National Hurricane Center is impact-based on what people can see even away from the center of that storm, right, Dan?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And with that storm, I mean, we could have used as much messaging as we could, and fortunately there was a lot of strong messaging, but to see impacts like that are that strong inland, it's something hopefully we remember this time around.
Speaking about messaging, Frank, let me ask you, we got some photos here for a conference you attended in South Carolina this week. We know you went to a hurricane conference in New Orleans last week. We know you were at an IWT with the National Weather Service today. I think these photos are from a joint conference you guys did with Emergency Management in South Carolina in Columbia. What are some of the messaging conversations that are happening in the room where it happens?
Yeah, well, that photo you see is occurring it was taken at our state emergency response team hurricane get together that occurred yesterday. And if you look really carefully, you can see me actually there. You have to look closely, though, and I'm not facing the camera.
Did you bring Stormy the Weather Cat to the meeting? That's what I
did not bring Stormy the Weather Cat. Unfortunately, cats are not permitted in the State Emergency Operations Center. So it would have been a bad idea to bring Stormy with me, especially if there was someone that was allergic. But anyway, I can't tell you the conversations we had because then I have to kill you. But
okay.
No, just kidding. No, it's nothing. Nothing's really a secret there. It's just that emergency managers getting together, and we went through a little tabletop exercise for Hurricane Sue occurring in late June. That would be one heck of a hurricane season. Let's hope that never happens.
Okay, so you guys did like a simulation?
Yes, yeah, we did a little
Okay.
simulation there, and the idea was just to try and identify what gaps we have that we need to fill as we approach hurricane season, and make sure that everyone has remembers the procedures that you need to go through in order to properly respond to hurricanes, and to make sure that we at South Carolina that our emergency response is what it needs to be should we have another hurricane or tropical storm move our way.
I mean, Frank, I was stuck on the fact that you guys did a simulation for an S-named storm in June. I mean, like, I hope in this alternate universe you're living in, we've not made it to S by June.
Exactly. Yeah, we were joking around about that yesterday.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Right. So
Well, you know
anyway,
what?
that was the
Go ahead.
meeting and yesterday, and then as you mentioned, I was attending a conference on behalf of the state climatology office in New Orleans, the National Hurricane Conference, and one of the fringe benefits is that I got to enjoy some great jambalaya. But the important part of that was to attend conferences, and actually got to talk with Dr. Phil Klotzbach of Colorado State University for a little while. And I invited him to come on, and hopefully we'll be able to have him on Carolina Weather Group as a guest sometime in May or June once the hurricane season is approaching or is just underway. So that hopefully we can look forward to that, and I think we can. He usually likes to come on and talk with us. But one of the things we talked about was the season's forecast, and how this year it's not really a slam dunk like it was last year. You know, last year it seemed pretty obvious that we were going to have a busy hurricane season. It ended up not being as busy as we thought, but pretty much everyone thought it would be an active to potentially hyperactive season. This year, you know, the indicators aren't quite what they were. As I mentioned, the waters have cooled off some since last year. Again, a lot of the Atlantic still above normal in terms of water temperatures, but they've come down some. Looks like we're heading toward ENSO neutral conditions probably for this season, and so that doesn't give us much of a signal either. There are other things that they consider as well. They look at computer model guidance. They look at from seasonal computer models run by both INSEP and by the ECMWF, makers of the Euro model that everyone holds in such high regard for short to medium term forecasting. Then there's also statistical models that they look at for this hurricane season that consider things that you might expect, like what the water temperatures are over the Eastern Atlantic and how much rainfall has occurred over Africa, but other things that you might not expect, like what the water temperatures are over a part of the Indian Ocean that they found has some kind of correlation to what happens in the Atlantic Basin. So a lot of different factors get considered there, and other things they look at as well. They used to look at winds in the stratosphere, called the quasi-biennial oscillation. Years ago, there seemed to be a good correlation, but somewhere in the late 90s, that correlation broke down, so they don't look at that as much as they used to. But a lot of things they look at, and it all boils down to what you see here with their forecast of 17 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes for the upcoming hurricane season.
Look forward to having Dr. Phil Klotzbach back on the show. Always appreciate his time each and every year. What a great forecast they always put together out there at CSU. Well, as we wrap up this edition of the Carolina Weather Group, let's look at the names for this 2025 hurricane season. The first one is Andrea or Andrea. Andrea. I'm looking at the pronouncer.
Yeah, that varies from Andrea to Andrea, depending upon her preference.
Yeah. Then we have Barry, Chantel, Dexter,
Chantal.
Aaron, Chantal.
Yeah,
you know what? I have the pronouncers in front of me, but for anybody who knows me, that doesn't help me at all. Phonics was not my strong suit. So somewhere my mother is listening to this right now, probably with her hands over her face, like, oh, my little boy can't read. But there you have it. We've got a Karen this year, guys. So I can already tell you right now, she's going to want to speak to the manager when she gets here.
We're designating you to be the manager, James.
I'm the manager? Okay.
You're the manager. When Karen shows up, we're going to tell her that you're the manager.
All right. Well, any last thoughts from our panelists tonight? Scotty, NASCAR season
I
off to a good
let
start.
him home, James.
I'm sure you are.
Yeah. NASCAR season, no weather issues yet.
Yeah, thanks for jinxing that. We haven't got to Charlotte yet.
Talladega, this Saturday's race could have a few thunderstorms, but Sunday looks pretty good. But so far, so good. Yeah. It was really cool to see Rockingham back on the schedule last week. Over 30,000 folks there to sell that out. So that was good too.
All right. Well, I'm sure the folks in Charlotte will be ready with the track
They're
dryers, because that is it seems to be
that is
now.
always we'll see a thunderstorm sometime during that week.
We will. Well, we got that stationary front, a couple passing showers, maybe some more rumbles of thunder this week. I don't think my lawn would mind it. But hey, if you want to stay informed about what's happening, our Carolina Weather Net streams are free on YouTube. Any place you watch YouTube, from your phone to your smart TV, you can see rotating sky cameras, radar. We're experimenting with voice alerts, so you can, now hear some of those live severe weather warnings being issued by the National Weather Service across the Carolinas. So we hope you will check that out in between our weekly show, which of course drops each and every Wednesday night. On behalf of Dan Whitaker in Greensboro and Frank Strait in Columbia and Scotty Powell in Myrtle Beach, I'm James Brierton in Charlotte, wishing you well, and we'll see you again back here next week for another edition of the Carolina Weather Group. Good night.